Greetings, YouTube. This is Six Me. Six
Me?
Greetings, YouTube. This is Sixes, and with me is EV
EV
Sceptile.
Sceptile, hello.
Yes, and we've come up with several archetypes that we believe need support because they haven't gone any recently. He's going to be starting off with
Venoms. Now, Venoms, I tried to build in my high school years. I tried to build a deck around them, but just because I had a bunch of their cards lying around in my shoebox of cards. Don't judge me. But anyway, I tried to build a deck around them, and I realized, wow, these things suck. So why do they suck? Well, they only have 4 main deck monsters by the actual name of Venom, Venom. There's 2 monsters that are spelled with 2 N's. I'll get to those in a second, but all of them have to do with counters, known as Venom counters, and they do nothing unless their field spell is up. And that field spell basically says for each Venom counter a monster has, it drops 500 attack. And if they drop to 0 by this effect, they get destroyed. Now, this effect was slow back when it was created, and it's completely dependent on the field spell. The field spell is gone, no dropping of attacks are done, and even the way the field spell distributed them was during the end phase, so it was super slow. A lot of the Venom monsters couldn't even attack the turn they did their counter spreading, and they gave him a freaking vanilla 2000 defense monster. I don't even understand that. But the one thing that they did have good was their boss monsters. Their boss monster, the first one is a level 8 Phenomenon. Which is the king of poisonous snakes. He cannot be special summoned by other monster effects, but he can be summoned with stuff like Call of the Haunted and Monster Reborn. And he gains 500 attack for each reptile monster in your grave. He's immune to Venom Swamp, so he doesn't get his attack decreased because some idiot did not spell their name right, I guess. But anyway, and when it's destroyed by battle, you can banish a reptile from your grave and then special summon it right back. So it was harder to get rid of, but it did decrease its attack because you were getting rid of reptiles in your grave. Snake Rain, however, is a very good card to fill up your graveyard. So its attack can get pretty good, and it's a pretty decent monster. However, if you use a trap card, Rise of the Snake Deity, you bring out Venomenaga. I said it right this time. And
Good for you.
basically, the trap card only activates when the king gets destroyed, which is very situational. But this card is super before its time, in my opinion. It gains 500 attack just like before. It gains 500 attack for each reptile in your grave, and it can only be special summoned by that trap card, which really kind of sucks. But it also cannot be targeted by and is unaffected by all spell, trap, and monster effects, which is ridiculous for its time.
Especially given how it is the first one to ever have that kind of effect.
Yeah, and it's very rarely distributed nowadays anyway. Just complete immunity to everything is ridiculous. It's unheard of in most decks. And Snake Rain can fill up the graveyard really fast, so you can make this thing's attack become incredibly high. And it has another effect which was also before its time, and really there's nothing else like it in the game. When it inflicts battle damage, you place a Hyper Venom counter on it, and when it reaches 3, you win the freaking duel. So it's got its own win condition. It's immune to everything. Its attack can get ridiculously high and impossible to get over. So if you get this thing out, it's very hard to beat. However, the problem is getting it out. And
because you're relying on a very specific trap they can only activate when a very specific monster is destroyed, and if you do it this way, it's going to be even more disappointing when somebody else puts a kaiju on it.
Yeah, exactly. And if this deck was good before kaijus were made, honestly, I think it would have been relevant. I think it would have been extremely good. But its problem is it's too slow. Its destruction of its field spell effect is just retarded. It's way too slow for its time, and it's really just a shame that it didn't even have any kind of influence at all in any kind of game at all. What I could see to improve this very quickly is a new field spell that focuses rather on dropping their attack little by little. Rather than doing that, it just straight up negates monsters' effects and drops their attacks to 0. Once per turn, during either player's turn, you can place Venom counters on monsters your opponent controls equal to the number of Venom monsters you control, and they'll be removed during the end phase of that turn. And the restriction would have to be, I think, you cannot summon other monsters to turn to activate this effect, except Venom monsters, simply because I feel like that would be super abusable if you could just negate everything just just every turn, and then summon out every Nightmare Link monster. It'd be kind of broken. But also, I would like to see some better monsters, of course, because they're terrible. With like some good field swarming effects, like more modern effects, floating to break snake rain, searching, maybe even some Link monsters. Basically, a Link monster retrain of Venom would be very interesting in the fact that I think it would be cool if it placed Venom counters on all monsters that were special summoned immediately as they were special summoned. So if you had the field spell up, nothing your opponent special summoned could do anything.
So effectively make it a alien kid kind of effect.
Kind of, yeah, but with the field spell, it's kind of like Alien Mars. If you had Alien Mars and Kid on the field,
yeah,
everything would be negated. But this is dropping their attack to 0. But the trade-off of this Link would be that it could be destroyed easily by everything, unlike the actual Venom Naga. But that's just what I think would be really good for the deck. I think it would be very nice. Some better ways to summon out the actual boss monster. I think it would make a good deck. It's just going to take a lot of work, similar to how vampires were, but they did it, so possible.
yeah.
But yeah, that's it for my first one.
Okay, going on to mine. And keeping with the theme of reptiles and zero attack monsters.
Oof.
Reptilian. I'm personally a big fan of the reptile type. I just think it's been underutilized as of now. They're synchro focused, which I think is interesting, especially given how a bunch of the cards like Viper can synchro using your opponent's zero attack monsters, and Vasky is even better because you can summon it by throwing to your opponent's zero attack monsters. The problem is getting your opponent's attack to 0. So they could be using Scapegoat, in which case that would make it a lot easier, but still, the problem is getting there. Hydra has a great draw effect, but you still need the actual stat reduction effects. Now, because of the existence of Reptilian Spawn, which says by removing from play 1 Reptilian monster from your graveyard, you can special summon 2 Reptilian tokens. What I think would be an interesting way of improving this archetype, other than giving it another synchro, because just one is just not enough. An interesting idea would be, because it's easy to make the tokens, what if you had a Reptilian Link monster that had the inverse arrows of Deco Talker? 2 arrows going up, 1 arrow going down. And the effect of this Link monster is that all monsters this card points to have their attack become 0. You still have one zone that you can actually summon monsters to, and you're going to be able to reduce the stats of 2 monsters your opponent controls to 0. Which benefit with Vasky. What I also think would be interesting would be an effect that you can destroy a Reptilian monster from your hand in order to search a Reptilian spell or trap card. So that would be easier to go into. Okay, admittedly the spell lineup isn't too good.
Yeah.
Reptilian Rage doesn't have anything to do with the archetype.
No.
But being able to sort out cards like Reptilian Spawn and maybe give them some new ones. Going along the lines of Reptilian Rage, what if you had an equip spell that you could equip to an opponent's monster, and that monster is now 0 attack? And when
That would work.
and when this card is sent to the graveyard, it goes back to your deck. So that way you could touch it with the Link monster. And the benefit...
make it return to your hand. Just spam it. That'd be awesome.
Going back to what I was saying about destroy a Reptilian card in your hand in order to search a Reptilian spell or trap from your deck. The benefit would be you would be able to destroy Gardener through that effect so that you can add a Reptilian monster to your hand as well. Meaning that because you're most likely pointing to 2 of your opponent's monsters, depending on the placement, you would be able to search out Vasky and Reptilian Spawn so you can easily bring out your boss monster even easier. And of course, basic thing of give them something so they can somewhat swarm the field, because they don't have that much.
No.
Reptile as a whole doesn't have that much. The really annoying thing with Reptilian is that they have Naga, Gorgon. That's it. Those are the only monsters they have. Okay, you have Medusa, but that's a level 6. So, we're talking about a deck that doesn't have tribute fodder, so that doesn't help any. But yeah, the idea of just being able to reduce the stats a lot faster and increase the consistency of it, because you don't really have to do that much to fix the archetype. Just give them like I said, the link monster that will be able to reduce the stats by pointing to things. So you don't have to worry about immune to targeting or stuff like that. Because it won't be a targeting effect. It will just be a pointing effect, I guess.
Like a passive effect that's always going on.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that would be a very interesting way to revise reptilians. So you want to continue with?
Yeah, Ally of Justice. So I'm gonna make this short and simple. All their effects, well, not all, but most of them have the effects that are only working if your opponent controls a light monster or is using light monsters in some capacity. Other effects include face down monsters, and that's not really a good focus these days. So, what could be done to this archetype would be really simple, and it's just DNA surgery for attributes, which I know there is a card that does that, but make it into a field spell. This way, it's searchable by terraforming, and make cards like other spell and trap cards, because they don't have any spell and traps, by the way.
Nope.
This is an archetype with nothing but monsters, and they're all bad, except for the level 5 synchro. Which is Catastor. And Catastor it was one of the best synchros in the game. It still isn't a bad pick if it battles anything that's not a dark monster. It's destroyed at the start of the damage step. It's good. It's easy to bring out, and they have some monsters that are decent. Cycle Reader banishes 2 lights from the grave. Core Destroyer has the same exact effect, but it has to be attacking a light monster or it being attacked by a light monster. And then Quarantine, straight up, neither player can special summon light monsters. If there was a field spell that could make all monsters your opponent controls in their hand and in their graveyard light, you could see Ally of Justice shut down, just immediately destroy stuff. Not to mention all of them are machine, which means you can use Iron Draw, you can use stuff like that, and really, the field spell doesn't even have to end there. That's only one effect. The field spell could do stuff like protecting dark monsters you control from card effects. It lets you field swarm maybe once per turn, kind of like the Magnet Warrior field spell. Lets you summon from the grave you control one. Maybe have this one summon from the deck, since this is a newer type of card, I guess, in a newer era. And just give them more like spell and traps, like I said. Maybe some searching, revival, searching for that field spell, because I feel like that field spell would be very dependent on you winning or not. Give them a link monster that just says 2 dark monsters and make its effect say all monsters on the field that your opponent controls are light. I mean, just make it do something like that. Make it benefit off of its own effect. And yeah, just make their spell and trap cards have better effects if your opponent controls a light monster. Make the effects like, like kind of like Sky Striker Ace, where you have a benefit for having more in the grave, but in this case, you benefit off of your opponent having light monsters, which you can manipulate. So I feel like that would be a kind of a simple way to fix it. Just give them actual spell and trap lineup and just a field spell to actually make their effects usable.
Sticking with the synchro machines, we're on to Carl Koi is probably the easiest archetype to sum up, as all I need to say is power creep. And that's because their appearance, their debut appearance that is, was in November 2010's Star Strike Blast pack. And their most recent support was Extreme Victories pack, which was released in May of 2011. So they only received cards from November 2010 to May 2011. That's a very short time to be receiving cards. And that's 7 years ago at this point. That being said, Gargoyle literally means mechanical device to tease, trick, and take a person by surprise. And this means of tricking and surprising works really well with the archetype in question, as Trick House, Clock, Runaway, and Cast Said are all really good at surprising the opponent and disrupting their plays. And also, despite how well some of these cards are, their synchros automatically give you advantage when they're summoned because they bring out another card Koi. And because of this, I think it would be very easy to give them more synchros and a link, because by the very nature of their synchros, they will regain any advantage they may have lost to make the link with their resources. Also, all they need is another wave of support, honestly, to make them a lot better. They don't even need anything in particular. They just need more cards with more recent effects. Because Anatomy, Cass, and the Merchant Model 177 is always really good at searching out the spell trap lineup. If they had more cards like this, and with more recent effects, as I mentioned, they would just be able to keep up. But as it is, they can't, because they're just outdated with their effects. You would like to continue now?
Yeah, next one is Flamevale, and this one is going to be really short because there's nothing really good about this deck except for 3 cards, and that's Flamevale Fire Dog, which at this point, you admit that it's outdated. When it destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the grave,
Yeah, that's where it's outdated.
To the grave. You can special summon a fire monster with 200 or less defense for your deck, which is nice because there's a huge selection. Because after this archetype was made, pretty much every fire type afterwards had 200 defense somewhere in that archetype. The main cards that came out of this was Rekindling, which is basically a soul charge for free, but it has to be fire monsters with 200 defense, which, like I said, type after this had it to some extent. And then a counter trap, which lets them negate a spell or trap card by banishing a fire monster with 200 grave, and negates the card. So it's pretty good. It's basically it's got a good counter engine. It can actually pull us off fairly consistently. And with Rekindling, it can do some real damage. But the problem is, their monsters, even their synchro monsters, what 2 they have are terrible. And the only good main deck monster they really have, I think, is Fire Dog. They have the stupid Flamevale Magician, which ties in with Ally of Justice, which coincidentally are beside each other in this list.
Let's just combine the 2 archetypes. I've no clue how it would work, but let's try. Ojama sort of worked with ABCs, but hey, that worked.
Let's do it. Let go with that, Konami.
No. But yeah, some things I would want to bring up in regards to this one is Ancient Flamevale Deity, which is a Pyro non-tuner, which I think is kind of weird, given that most of the tuners are Pyro monsters.
Yeah, you can't even use Flamevale Fire Dog, which is the only combo piece, if you want to call it that, in the deck.
And with that, the most effective thing you can do with that is bring out Red Resonator.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know that this Flamevales were released in Duotono along with X-Sabers. And whereas X-Sabers got revamped with the new improved Double X-Sabers, they tried and failed that with Flamevales with the Neo Flamevales.
Yeah,
which focused on what?
Basically having no cards in your opponent's grave. Which, honestly,
you have no control over and would never work against Light Swarms or anything at this point.
With Neo Flamevale Origin, this is what card I want to point to. If you control a face-up Flamevale monster and your opponent has 3 or less cards in your grave, you special summon this card from your hand. It's a level 2 tuner. This card represents what I think actually might be able to make Flamevale somewhat playable. And here's what I'm thinking. You have to, if they were to revamp this archetype, they would have to put a focus on just deleting the graveyards, like not banishing as soon as they go to the grave, but hand picking cards from the graveyard and deleting them. There would have to be, of course, restrictions on this because that would be very, very annoying to deal with. But they would have to just absolutely make every card they make in some fashion get rid of stuff from the grave so they could abuse their effects. And really, they would need at least 2 effects. Like I was saying earlier with the Ally of Justice stuff, they have effects, but their effects get better if your opponent has less cards in their grave. And I think making a synchro with that kind of idea as well, I think they could do it. I think they could really, if they wanted to, they could make Flamevales have a play style, have something to do, besides just their spell card, which is infamously broken. And that's really all they're known for. It's stupid. It doesn't even have their name on the card anywhere. So yeah, I think they could go with something off of this, but it would take a lot of, I'm talking at least 10 cards. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about Flamevales.
Now,
you got a similar archetype.
Now going on to an archetype that actually makes more use of rekindling than Flamevales, Lavars. Now, Lavars are pretty much entirely, they can't do anything without rekindling. Because here's what they can do. They can set up the graveyard. That's it. You see, they have their own double Foolish Burial, which is Molten Conduction Field. Send 2 Laval monsters from your deck to the graveyard. What else can that send? Well, it can send Laval Volcano Handmaiden, which states that if this is sent to the graveyard and you have another Laval monster in your graveyard, which you will because it sends 2, you can send another Laval monster from your deck to graveyard, including itself, meaning you can instantly go from 2 cards in the graveyard to 5 cards in the graveyard.
It's potentially crazy.
Yeah. But the thing is, they're all set up and no plan.
Right.
You
Nothing
see,
to pay off at the end.
now, here's the thing. If you had a card that could search out Searing Firewall, this would become a lot more useful. You see, Searing Firewall has the effect that you can pass any amount of Laval monsters from your graveyard as you want. Then specify an equal number of Laval tokens in defense position. I know what you're thinking. Link potential. And yes, of course, give them a link. I want you. Now, the other benefit is that you're banishing Lavals from the graveyard, which surprisingly enough, they have trouble doing. Why is that so important? Because Laval Cannon is, where it's normal or flip summon, you can special summon a banished Laval monster, which is how you do most of the swarming plays, synchro plays, and yes, keep going on, because Handmaiden and the other important one, Laval Lakeside Lady, are tuners. Level 1 and 3 tuners to be specific. Meaning you can keep doing a bunch of synchro plays with this. The problem is, like I said, banishing them in the first place, which you think would be a simple enough cost.
Right.
But nope, they don't do it. So what they need a banishing cost so they can set up for plays, such as Searing Firewall. One thing I noticed with both this one and the previous one is that Volcanic is the only pure pyro fire archetype.
Yep.
Everything's just like, oh, this one's a warrior, this one's a beast warrior, this one's a beast. Make up your mind. They're all fire, you just make them all pyro. Because then you know what'll be useful? Warrior Firestorm Guards.
Oh, yeah. If every one of them were all pyros, they'd all be able to use that card. And that card is still considered to be good today.
Yeah, recycle them, draw some cards, and because you recycled Handmaiden, send it to the graveyard again, set it, and do it all over again. I think yes, we repeating points at this point, so you're next.
Yeah. Alright, next is Triamid, and this is a deck that I really like, but it feels very incomplete. It feels like an anime deck that was on one episode, and they just never bothered to give it more cards. With Triamids, they have 4 main deck monsters, and 3 field spells, and a continuous trap card. Their main play style is getting rid of their field spells. All of their field spells have a floating effect and an active on-field effect. Fortress, which just looks like a pyramid, gives them 500 defense. All rock monsters 500 defense, and they cannot be destroyed by card effects. The Cruiser, whenever it's active, so lets you normal summon. It gives you 500 life points when you normal summon a rock monster. And if a rock monster is normal summon, you can draw, or a Triamid monster is normal summon. Excuse me. You could draw a card and then discard one, which is pretty good deck thinning, and just overall, it's a really great card. Then there's King Golem. And all 3 of these are basically a transformation of the pyramid. It's really cool. But King Golem gives you 500 more attack, and Triamid monsters that battle, your opponent cannot activate cards and effects in response to them until the end of the damage step. All of these have floating effects, like I said. Fortress lets you revive one from your grave and add it back to your hand. Cruiser lets you add 1 Triamid monster from your deck to your hand. And King Golem lets you special summon a Triamid from your hand. So all 3 of these really work together to get King Golem's field swarming effect going. Like I said, you could run 3 of each in the deck, so you could run just a whole lot of just destruction. And what happens if you run out of field spells? Well, the continuous trap, Triamid Pulse, lets you recycle 3 field spell cards from your grave and shuffle them back to the deck to draw a card. But you had to banish 2 cards from your graveyard, and they have to be either rock monsters or field spells, so you can recycle them if you want. There's also other ways to recycle field spells, excluding this archetype. And then you can either destroy cards by banishing 2 from your grave. You can target a rock in your grave and special summon it by banishing 2 from your grave. So it's a somewhat versatile trap. Its cost is a little high, but it's a somewhat versatile trap with a lot of cool field spell effects. Dancer gives all rock monsters a permanent 500 attack boost, and Hunter lets you normal summon another rock. Master lets you send a Trimed card you control, either the field spell or a monster, and then destroy a set card on the field. And then all of them have the effect during the opponent's turn to swap out a field spell. Basically, send one you control to the grave, and then activate another directly from the deck. And that, of course, triggers their effects and allows you to thin your deck even more. So terraforming really isn't even needed, but you run it anyway. And then their boss monster is a level 10, which is a Trimed Sphinx. And you know what that means. You can tribute it to bring out Exod. Anyway.
Really? Really? That's where your mind jumps to?
Every time.
I forgot that card existed.
Anyway. It can only be special summoned by the effect of a Trimed card and can't be special summoned by other ways, but there's a lot of ways to do this. The field spell, King Golem lets you summon from the hand, the Pulse lets you summon from the graveyard, so there's ways to bring this thing out. And it also has its own effect. If a face-up Trimed card you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon it from your hand, which is amazing whenever you pair this up with Metal Foes. It's actually very consistent to bring this out, and it doesn't even miss timing because it says if. It's amazing. Also, while you control another Trimed card, it gains 500 attack and defense for each field spell with a different name in your grave. Also, monsters your opponent controls cannot attack other monsters you control except for this one, which is awesome. That is an awesome effect. It is a Ring of Magnetism, super beefy monster. If you have 3 of them in the grave, you're getting 1,500 attack, and if you have King Golem on the field, you're getting 2,000 on top of it already having 2,500 attack. So the deck is really good. And I think it has a lot of, combination plays with Metal Foes.
The issue is it's only 8 cards and nearly half of them are field spells.
Yeah. And that's just a problem. As its own deck, it doesn't work. With Metal Foes, it can work pretty decently. But as its own thing, it really doesn't have a lot to say for it. But that's pretty much the only complaint I have about it. It's a really fun deck if you want to try it. It actually has some field swarming potential. So if they gave him a link, it could be possible to make some pretty impressive fields with Tribe and Hunter, allowing you to normal summon twice, and Cruiser benefiting you in 2 different ways for normal summoning Rock and Tribe and monsters, which is crazy. So yeah, I just think the deck has a lot of potential. It's just untapped because of lack of support. Konami, please add more cards.
Yeah, go back to them. I always say when they do that, yes, they make a very small wave of support. Moving on, I have the Chronomalies. These were from the anime, and they were again walk-based. I didn't even mean it to fit this way. Oh well.
Well.
And no, before you even think about it, you cannot combine these. You know why? Because 4 of the Chronomaly cards have the restriction that you cannot special a monsters you activate this card, except for Chronomalies. Yep, 4 of them lock you into Chronomaly monsters. Are their extra deck monsters good? Well, here's the thing. Their rank 4 and rank 5 only work together. They only work together. If you only have one on the field and not the other one, they don't work as well. So, one of them has the ability to change the attack of a monster your opponent controls to 0. The other one lets you inflict damage to your opponent equal to demonstrating a monster's original attack and its current attack. See what I mean? And you can't get them on the field at the same time because the links exist and there are no Chronomaly links. Work on that because this is a major design flaw. The other one that you can make is number 6 Chronomaly Atlantis. The thing about Atlantis is that when this is Xe summoned, target a number monster in your graveyard, equip that to this card. Meaning, it's never a good beginning play. Because that's what all of its effects revolve around. Equipping a number monster from the graveyard to it. Which obviously requires a little bit of setup. But the thing I like about Chronomalies is that they'll based off, well, as you can probably guess from the name, chronological anomalies, things that do not exist in the time that they were meant to be, such as a winged sphinx or the nebula disk. That means that there is a lot of potential for them to make new cards to work with them, because they haven't made one about the Antikythera mechanism. I'm guessing you don't know what the Antikythera mechanism is.
No.
Okay, let me explain to you about this. So the Antikythera mechanism appears to just be an analog computer that, predict the positions of planets, predict eclipses, calendars, all that kind of stuff. Well, you know what's unique about it? It was dated between 70 and 60 BC. It's an analog computer with I think bronze or brass gears on it. That sound like a anomaly?
Definitely.
Yeah, so take that as inspiration, because with cards like the Nebula disc, it legitimately just looks like the actual Nebula sky disc. So yes, take the concept of this and put it on a card. There's several other ones you could potentially go with, because trust me, there's a lot of things in history that people have noticed, and it was just like, wait, how does this thing exist? How is this real? But yeah, they have so much potential to keep adding cards. This is a problem I have with some other ones, like desk parts. How can you say they can add cards when they're based off of numbers and they did 1 through 9? How can you continue when they're based on the amount of levels you can have on a Yu-Gi-Oh card? Another thing is Batman. How can you extend the lineup when there's only so many different kinds of batteries you have?
Yeah.
Quote only don't have this problem. But yeah, that's all I have to say about it. Just give it a link so that you can only summon Chronomaly monsters isn't as much of a restriction. You can't make any new numbers. I think they went through all the numbers. But you can make new Chronomalies that have more updated effects.
Alright, then it is time for the last and the worst. Well, never mind, Venom is the worst. But this is pretty terrible, except for really 2 cards.
Yeah, I thought I went back in time.
Evoltile, Evolsar, Evolzar. Those 3 abominations. Well, if you played against any dinosaur player, you've seen Evolsar, Dolka, and Lagia. They negate spell and traps and summons, monster effects, respectively. And they are both 2 level 4 dinosaur type Xyz monsters. So
Dragon.
Oh, dragons, that's right. Well, they require dinosaur type monsters.
Yeah.
Basically what I'm saying. And that's basically all they have to their name. What they do is they evolve, and it's kind of like the level mechanic, but somehow even worse. Evoltile Odonto is just what I'm gonna give you an example of. It's a reptile. It's a low level reptile with kind of low stats. When it's normal summoned, you can special summon Evolsar monster from your hand. And there's a bunch of little ones that have varying effects of how they do it. Some flip, some when they're destroyed, some when they're tributed. Oh gosh. But anyway, you got the Evolsar monsters. And they range from level 4 to level 6. And none of their effects are really great. But Elias is a good example.
Hello, I am Elias.
Of a good one. When this card is special summoned by the effect of an Evoltile monster, you can special summon a level 6 or lower fire dinosaur type monster from your hand. This can work with Jurax, but you would have to be running Jurax with Evoltile and Evolzar. And it's not good. It's honestly, there's not a good way to run this deck because it's so conflicted. A lot of reptile types in this video, but it's so conflicted between the reptile going into dinosaur, going into dragon. I love the concept. It's like a Pokemon thing. It's evolution. I love it. But just like the level mechanic, it just doesn't work right. It doesn't work fast enough nowadays. If this was made back in the old days of Yu-Gi-Oh, like the oldest dirt days, then maybe maybe it would have done really good. But yeah, it's way too slow for modern Yu-Gi-Oh. And honestly, this is a deck that I have no idea what they could do to fix it. Because
I
they
don't
really
have a guess either, because all I know is they go into each other. They have some of them have effects when they are summoned that way. Some of them have negatives when they're summoned that way, which makes no sense. And they have
it punishes
3
you for playing the
Xyz.
deck. Really, there's no reason, and I don't think they'll ever have a good reason to use this archetype over Jurax, even. I was gonna say, just dinosaurs, just a generic dinosaur deck, but there's no reason to use these over Jurax, because Jurax at least have a focus, battle, synchro, attack increase, stuff like that. But the Evol archetype is it's just trying to slowly scale up from reptile to dinosaur to dragon, and adding those steps in makes it so hard for it to actually work. And honestly, I'm not even joking. There is no idea that I can think of that can make this archetype playable. And if they made it playable, it would probably be something like Nordics, where they just make it just here. We give you a link in a main deck monster. Boom, you can make your plays now for free.
Yeah,
And
no effort into
yeah,
the design.
just
Just it works. Don't question it. Oh, and also one thing that
right.
doesn't make sense for the Xyz focus is that they have levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, but they only have ranks for 4 and 6. So why all the level diversity?
Exactly. And if they were to do something consistent, it would have to be through like a continuous effect from like a field spell or something that would allow you to evolve them quicker. It would just, to me, it's just a step. It's too much steps being taken to do what every other deck can do without any problem. And I don't think there's a way to fix this deck. I can't think of any way to fix it. Can you?
No, I don't have a clue. I know that it's kind of based off of the evolution peels that,
Yeah.
like the one that let you tribute a reptile so you can summon dinosaurs without a tribute. But the problem is you try to find the benefit of running reptiles and dinosaurs when you can just run dinosaurs.
Exactly. Dinosaurs have so much more consistency. It's just a generic dinosaur deck than you would ever have trying to smash reptiles into it. It's too slow. It's too gimmicky. Honestly, it's up to the comments of this video. If anyone watching this video can think of a way to fix this archetype, let us know. I'd be curious to read.
Yeah. So, my turn?
Yeah, your last one, I guess.
Yep. And now, finally, an archetype that has nothing to do with the one that he has mentioned. This being Perform Mages. Now, Perform Mages have had a few of their cards printed from the anime. However, emphasis on a few. There's only like 10 at the moment. And of those, one's in Xyz, one's limited to 1. There's 2 Pendulum cards, one of which is banned, which is really unfortunate because in the anime he got multiple pendulums. It was a pendulum archetype, and in addition to the 1 Xyz that they did print, there was 2 other Xyz that they didn't print, and a fusion that they didn't print. Now, why I don't think they should just straight up copy them from the anime, because the effects are not the greatest. It's as shown by cards like Arya, the Melodious Diva. They can drastically change the effect of an anime card, even if it's one that's been shown multiple times. Because in the anime, Arya just had a effect where if it attacked and your opponent didn't take battle damage, they would take effect damage. pointless. But in the actual game, they gave it a really good effect that protected all your melodious monsters from targeting and, well, battle destruction. And therefore, I think they would have a lot of potential with updating and printing the anime Performance cards. Because, like I said, only 10, and there's only 2 pendulums, and you can't even pendulum summon in the deck. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. Bubble Burial is sailed with the Performer Pals, pretty much ensuring that they would always be in the shadow of the other performance archetype. But Dennis McField, the character that used them in the anime, he was a Lancer. He was one of the finalists in the tournament. And yet they only printed the cards from his early appearances, basically. I would find it really interesting if they did bring in the rank 5 Xyz, a fusion, at least one fusion, and more of the pendulum cards, so there would be a pendulum archetype that could also do Xyz and fusion plays. I think that would actually be a very interesting concept. I can't think of any other archetype that's done that other than, well, technically Draco Slayer. But yeah, I think this would be an interesting approach to doing it, because it's clear that they are still willing to print some of the anime cards from Arc 5 based off the fact that in Battle of Legends Relentless Revenge we got some of Iggy Arlo's Star Warriors. So if they're willing to wait that long to print cards from a character from, I think it was the first season of Arc 5, then why not print some of the ones from a recurring character from Arc 5? The entire idea was that he was from the Fusion Dimension, but he was hiding as an Xyz dimensionalist. Or dualist at least. And some of these actually had interesting effects from the anime. I can think of one that had a draw 2 effect. That would be nice. I would just like to have it that they had more cards, because that's the problem that both Venoms and Trimids have. Not enough cards to do anything with. If Performates, because they only have Trick Clown, they can pretty much storm the field without that much trouble. And yeah, they do have the problem of having a banned card and a limited card, which does not help the amount of cards that they have. So technically all they have is 9 cards, because they decided to make Plus Fire a little too good. But seriously, just come up with some newer ideas for the Performage archetype, print those up, and just see how it goes. See if you can make it an actual archetype. But yeah, that's all I have to say on the matter. Thanks for watching the video. Thanks EV Sceptile for being in the video. That's all for this time.